Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. Therefore you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. May I continue? Take to heart these words which I enjoin on you today. Drill them into your children. Speak of them at home and abroad, whether you are busy or at rest. Bind them at your wrist as a sign, and let them be as a pendant on your forehead. Write them on the doorposts of your houses and on your gates. That's called the Shema, the prayer which every good Jew would know and commit to heart. Obviously, the command is there for them to take this and ingrain it in themselves. So what would they do? The Orthodox Jews, if you go, I was privileged to be in Israel and to see the Wailing Wall, and at the Wailing Wall I saw the Jewish Orthodox. They have these little boxes on their heads called phylacteries, and they have them on their wrists. And in that little box is this particular passage from Scripture. So that literally, as it says it in the book of Deuteronomy, it's on their foreheads, it's on their arms to remind them. It's also on their doorposts in their homes. The mezuzah. If you go to a Jewish home that practices the faith, you will find a little scroll on the doorposts of the outside and inside. If they're serious, they touch it like we would touch holy water coming into our churches. They touch it to remind them of that scripture passage. It was so important and so essential. So when Jesus was asked this question, what's the greatest commandment in the law? And there weren't just 10 commandments, as we might think. Go into the Jewish law, understand the scriptures. I didn't do the counting, but you can find 613 commandments. There is one, thou shalt not, for every day of the year. They were the negative commandments, and the positive ones also exist there. The balance of them are do this. So there's the shalt nots, and there's the do this list for the Jews. The 10 greatest are the Decalogue, the 10 commandments, which have endured the test of time. We know them. They become the basis of law oftentimes, so that we understand what God expects. But what's number one? Sometimes we brush this off and say, oh, that's a given. We have to love God. But what does it mean to love God? As Jesus says, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. He brings that up first. So we need to penetrate that a little bit, because I'm sure we don't all practice that. Every day when you get up, do you think of God? During the course of the day, do you constantly think of God? Are you reminded, like, God is here, God is here, God is on my doorpost? Yeah, that's a visible sign, an exterior sign, but it's saying, get God into your heart so that everything you think and say and do reflects that relationship that you have with God. So we start with the heart, which is seen as the center of love, the center of emotion. We give hearts to people at Valentine's Day for that purpose, because it's always been seen as a place of love. So how do we love God with all our heart? Well, the first thing we have to do, if we're centering on the heart, is to eliminate sin in our life. Anything that's displeasing. If we love somebody, we don't want to hurt them. We don't want to sin. So we would say in the spiritual journey, the spiritual life, it's the purgative way. We're purging out sin from our lives. Separating our actions from maybe the emotions at times we feel, but to center on a deep and true love, which Jesus showed us. Again, a sacrificial love from the cross. We understand that in its fullness. I'm willing to give myself completely to you. Do we do that in return from our hearts? Then when we take on the idea of loving with all our mind, we get into the second phase in the spiritual life called the illuminative phase. And if we pursue that, if we've gotten through the point where we're ridding our lives of sin and anything displeasing to God, now we can learn to understand, to be illuminated more with God from our intelligence, with our mind. So what should we be doing to increase and enhance that aspect of the human person? Read the scriptures, read spiritual writings, educate ourselves, go beyond the simple, I went to CCD and I left and that was it. How many people do that in their lives? They have maybe a CCD education and then not going beyond that. You know, do we educate ourselves? Do we know our faith? And do we know it clearly? To illuminate ourselves, to become aware, use our minds so that we can progress in our spiritual journey. And then it leads to the final step, which we're called to, loving God with all our soul. And that penetrates the unitive way, the third and the final way, which is union with God. That's what we say we hope for, to be one with God one day. It's reflected in the scriptures often as a marriage covenant, a bond so great and so deep that God initiates it. You will be my God, you will be my people, I will be your God. There's that covenant created in similarity to the marriage covenant. And so we have that desire, hopefully, to be united with God, our very soul, our very being with him. That's what God desires for us. Do we desire that for ourselves? Because I can see in our culture, God is too much an afterthought. God is not that important. I'll give God time when I have, maybe it's convenient to me. This is the problem in our society, our culture, even our church. We don't preach and teach as well as we should, as clear as we should, so that we know God has to be number one in all of our lives. This is Christ's own words. And then when he takes mysteriously a small or a minor commandment, you go into Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18. I bet you many people have not even broken open the book of Leviticus because it's a lot of laws. It's a lot of, this doesn't matter, but it does matter. Jesus points out this particular commandment may seem insignificant, and he places it of importance. Why is that almost a natural flowing out of our love for God? Because if we become like Christ, if we're self-giving like him, if we care and truly love somebody, we care about the good of the other, not the good of ourselves. Love one another as I have loved you, is what Jesus points out. And how does he love us? Completely. He gave everything. He emptied himself on our behalf. And so if we're going to love as Jesus loved, then we'll love our neighbor. It'll be a natural thing that we love even as he showed us, loving enemies. Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. That's a hard thing to do. But this is the calling of Jesus if we're really and truly going to love. So if we want to sum it all up, there it is. Jesus made it simple for us. Simple for us, really? If we realize the depth of what he's saying, if we communicate that to one another and understand, we have to love him with all our heart and mind and soul. And what does that mean? Do I do it every day? Do I drill it into my children? Do I speak of him when I'm home or away? No matter what I'm doing, is he always in my mind and in my thoughts, in my heart? I dare say very few of us will pass the test, will be able to do what Jesus requires of us. And there is the challenge. Jesus, it may simplify things. We may not have to keep all the old laws, because the Jewish laws, again, they had a lot of ritual laws that had to do with what's clean foods and what's not, how to eat, how to dress. That's ritual things. They had liturgical things in the life of the Jew, and from which, by the way, we get many of our liturgical actions here. We have altars and tabernacles and vestments and all sorts of symbolic things that come from the Jewish faith. We didn't just make these things up. They were handed on to us, ritual sacrifice that was given, liturgical instructions that were given to us from our Jewish brothers and sisters. And then we have moral code given to us by the Jewish people, the moral laws, the commandments that we live. They're all so important. Jesus told us this is the summary of them. And so we should meditate upon it and then try to put it into practice each and every day. There's the real challenge if you want to be one of his disciples. May God bless you.